Life is like a big puzzle. Each event in life is like a piece of that puzzle. But if we don't know what the picture of the puzzle looks like ahead of time, we're going to be really, really confused. So today we're going to learn that God can see the full picture, but we can't, which means we're going to be living out our puzzle by faith. Join us today as we continue in the book of Genesis as we study the life of Joseph. Good morning. Welcome to those that are here in Phoenix. We're glad you're joining us. For those watching us online, however you found us, we are glad you're with us too. We are in Genesis. I think we're almost like 4 lessons away from being done. Hallelujah to that. We have been in this for 2 years. So today what we're going to do is we're going to show you one really powerful video. Then we're going to do 2 complete chapters in the book of Genesis because, like I said, we got to get through this book. So let's start here. Kyle Idleman, he wrote a book called Don't Give Up. And he talks about when he, used to go to his grandparents' house when he was younger. He would go and visit them, but it wasn't in the days of like iPads and cell phones and stuff like that. There wasn't anything to do. So he would go and ask his grandma what to do, and she would be like, I don't know why why is that doing that? Okay, anyway, if you hear that, I don't know why that happens. Stop. Okay. So anyway, he goes to his grandma's house, and he's like, and so she says, well, I have puzzles. So he would go in the closet, and he would pull out puzzles, but she didn't have them in boxes with pictures. She had taken all the puzzle pieces for a specific puzzle, put them in a plastic bag, and would throw away the box. Okay, go figure that. So he'd pull out a whole plastic bag of puzzle, but he would never know what he's putting together. And so he's like, well, is this the Chicago skyline or a farmhouse or 3 snobby cats? Like, he just had no idea what it was. So he would get the outer rim done, which of course we know is the easiest, and he had no picture. He didn't even know what he was looking at. So he would just put everything back in the bag and just call it a day. Because he says this. He said, when you have a few puzzle pieces without knowing the big picture, it's really easy to give up. And I get that, and I think you get that too. I got an email from a woman when I was putting this lesson together, and her life was a disaster. Okay, it wasn't even just like one bad thing, but it was one after another after another. And she was just at a loss at what to do. And I think it was because she had a few puzzle pieces with no big picture. And if there's no box to see, like my dad and I, we would put puzzles together. This is what they would look like. And see that silo in the back by the red barn? Yeah. I could never find silo pieces, ever. Like I couldn't see it. And so what I would do is I would get the box out and I would study the box. And I'd be like, Dad, I can't find the stupid silo pieces. But I had something to look at. But that's because I had the picture. Now, here's what we learn about life. We don't have our puzzle piece or our puzzle picture. We don't have a picture of what our life is supposed to be like. And so what happens is in our Christian faith, seeing a big picture doesn't take faith. Like if God handed you your puzzle the day you were born and said, these are all the puzzle pieces that are going to go into your life. Each puzzle piece is going to be an event in your life. These, and we're going to put them together and this is going to be your puzzle. You'd be like, oh, okay, that's fine. But we don't know that. So we have to live every one of our puzzle pieces out by faith. Hebrews 11:1 says this, now faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. In other words, faith is the confidence as followers of Jesus, here you go, confidence that all the pieces are going to somehow fit together in life. The divorce, the cancer, the death, the loss of your job, the loss of custody, the heartache, the prison sentence. Each one of those, look at these cool puzzle pieces. Aren't those cool? Okay. Each one of those, every one of your life events is like a puzzle piece. And God has this big puzzle for you in your life, but each puzzle piece fits together until you die. And then our little puzzle pieces fit into God's big puzzle. So it kind of works out awesome. Now, that's what we're going to see today in the life of Joseph. So as we're getting back into Genesis today, I'm going to give a real quick recap. So in case you're new or you've forgotten or you weren't here last time, we'll pick up where we were. So here's what's going on here. Genesis, we know Abraham father of the nation, the Jewish nation. He, of course, through his lineage would come Jesus. Abraham has Isaac. Isaac has Jacob. We have been months and months and months on the life of Jacob and all of his descendants. As you can see there, we call this Jacob's dysfunctional family tree because there was so much dysfunction in his family. Jacob loved Rachel on the right. She could not have children. He ends up not wanting to marry Leah on the left, but he was forced into it. He has all these children. So basically how it comes out is there's 10 older children left of Rachel, and then the 2 youngest, which is Joseph and Benjamin. Now, the problem is that Jacob, the dad, he had a favorite son, and that would have been Joseph. Loved Joseph. Everything was about Joseph. Joseph. So the 10 boys to the left are all jealous. So because of that, one day, they kidnap him, basically. They sell him to traders that are on their way to Egypt. Egypt's a long way away from Israel. And they tell their dad, I'm so sorry, your favorite son, Joseph, has been killed by a wild animal. And he's just devastated. Like, it's devastated his entire life. But Joseph wasn't dead. He ends up in Egypt, okay? He's a slave to a man by the name of Potiphar. Potiphar's wife thinks Joseph's super hot, so she wants to sleep with him. And he's like, absolutely not. I would never do that to your husband or my God. And so she's mad. So she cries, rape, he raped me. He goes to prison. Now, what we see in the life of Joseph those are some bad things. But each one of those things that happen is part of his puzzle piece. They fit together into a bigger picture that he cannot see. He has no idea what's going on. Now, years later, through a series of events, he's in prison. Joseph is called by Pharaoh. Now, not on the phone, of course. They didn't have phones back then. But I have to tell you my funny cell phone joke, okay? There were several men dressing at a really exclusive, they were in the locker room of a really exclusive club. And so there was a cell phone sitting there, and it starts ringing, so the guy picks it up, hello. And on the other end, it's like, hey, honey, it's me. And he's like, hey, what's up? She's like, are you at the club? He's like, yeah, I am. She goes, great. She goes, I'm at the mall, pretty close to the club, but I want to get your permission for this. I just found a beautiful mink coat. And she's like, it's absolutely gorgeous. Can I buy it? He goes, well, how much is it? She goes, $1,500. And he goes, well, go ahead. If you like it that much, that's fine. She goes, that's great. She goes, but now I want to tell you something else. I'm driving by the Mercedes dealership. Remember that Mercedes we found? Like, it's on sale now. He goes, well, how much is it? $70,000. And he's like, well, all right, that's fine, but just make sure you get all the options. She's like, great. She goes, before we hang up, one more thing. Remember that house that we were looking at? Okay, beachfront property, pool, English garden, remember that? They just lowered the price. And he's like, well, how much is it? And she goes, it's $650,000. And she goes, I saw our bank account. I know we have the money. I just need your approval to buy it. And he goes, well, just go ahead and offer $620 and let's see if they do that. Great, thanks. Honey, talk to you later. She hangs up. The man hangs up, closes the phone, and raises it and says, does anyone know whose phone this is? Like, can you imagine the guy coming home and going, why do you have a car and a house? Like, I don't know. I don't know why that made me laugh. All right, so anyway, Pharaoh does not call him on the phone. That's my whole point to that, okay? He calls Joseph from his prison cell. And because Pharaoh had a terrifying dream, and he had heard that this young Hebrew slave, Joseph, could interpret dreams. So Pharaoh calls Joseph to him and tells him the dream. And Joseph says, okay, God is the one who interprets, not me. But here's what God has told me. There's going to be 7 years of plenty in Egypt. And then there's going to be 7 years of famine. And he's like, you better get a grip on this, like ASAP. You need to put someone in control who can store grain and make sure that we have enough food for the 7 years. So Pharaoh thinks Joseph's awesome, and then he puts him in charge. He is now second in command to Pharaoh, from prison to second in command. Now, at this particular time that we're at, when we left off, the famine has hit not only Egypt, but it also has hit Israel. So Joseph's dad and his 11 brothers are basically starving in Israel. So the dad says, go to Egypt. We hear that there's food there. Go there and get us some grain. Now remember, we talked about this, I think, the last lesson. Egypt holds some really dark things for those boys because they know their brother's there. They don't know where, but it's just a reminder of what they did in their life and lied to their dad. So they go there, unbeknownst to them when they walk up to get the grain, that the man handing out the grain is Joseph, their brother. But they don't recognize him. Like Joseph recognizes them, but they don't recognize who Joseph is because remember, he's been in Egypt for over 20 years. He acts like an Egyptian, dresses like an Egyptian, speaks their language, like everything about him, like it would never occur to them that this is my long-lost brother. Now, Joseph sees them. I think he's shocked. The first thing he does is accuses them of being spies, and he tells them, if you're not spies, I need you to go home, get your youngest brother, Benjamin, which is his literal brother, okay? Because Joseph doesn't know, are you mean to Benjamin? Like, are you treating Benjamin like you treated me? Like, he needs to know what these boys have become. So what he does is he takes Simeon, which is the one on the very far left. He takes Simeon and he puts him in a jail cell in Egypt. And he says, I'm holding him until you bring your youngest brother to me. So, okay, now they're on their way back home. Unbeknownst to these boys, Joseph takes their silver that they purchased the grain, puts it back into their sacks, and the whole reason is when they come back, he wants to know if they're honest. Are they going to say like, oh, we found silver, or are they going to keep it? Like he needs to know what's going on with the brothers. And so they open their sacks, and of course they're terrified. They go back home to Jacob, their father, and they tell him everything that just happened. What just happened. And that's where we pick up our story today. Now, Jacob, of course, in Jacob fashion, as we know, he feels sorry for himself. Wow, because that's how Jacob is. Here's what he says in verse 36. Their father Jacob said to them, you have deprived me of my children, like it's these boys' fault. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more, and now you want to take Benjamin. Everything is against me. Okay, you just like, if we were there, we'd just like punch him in the face. Like, stop it. You're driving me nuts. But I think that there's an insight here on how these 10 boys had to have felt. Like, think about it. They feel less than. We're not daddy's favorite. Daddy loved Joseph and now Benjamin way more than us. Like, it's just kind of sad. So Reuben says something that a son should never have to say to his father. Look what he says here. Then Reuben said to his father, you may put both of my sons to death if I do not bring him back to you. Entrust him to my care, and I will bring him back. Really? Like, not only is he's saying, you can take my 2 sons and kill them. Those 2 sons are Jacob's grandsons. Like, who would say something like that? But that's what Jacob is making them feel like, So then he goes to verse 38. Jacob said, my son will not go down there with you. His brother is dead, and he's the only one left. He's the only one left? Like, don't we have 10 other boys in this family? Like, really? But, this is imagine being those 10 boys. So he says, if harm comes to him on the journey you're taking, you will bring my gray head down to the grave in sorrow. Like, why wouldn't he say, like, if any of you died on the way, I would be heartbroken? No, he didn't say that. Jacob's ridiculous. But he doesn't want to part with his precious son Benjamin to the detriment of his entire family. His son Simeon is sitting in a jail cell in Egypt, and he doesn't seem too concerned about it. So I can't imagine how they felt. So I want to talk about that for a minute because some of you get this, all right? You had really, really difficult childhoods. Some of you were abused probably, physically by a parent. Some of you were abused sexually. Others, like Joseph's brothers, were like kind of emotionally abused. And I think these guys never, ever felt loved by their dad. And some of you get that. You're like, yep, that sounds exactly like my life. But my point is this, that no matter what your past has been, God can still use it. He still can use it to further the message about Jesus if you let him. Now, I'll show you how. We learned this from Josh McDowell. I don't know if many of you know Josh McDowell. He has a huge, huge ministry. We actually had him come and speak one time many, many years ago. He wrote a book, Evidence That Demands a Verdict. He wrote More Than a Carpenter. Here is his little ministry impact worldwide. 27 million copies of More Than a Carpenter has been distributed all over the world. 153 books have been written or co-authored by Josh. 32,000 talks Josh has given over in 139 countries, and 128 languages in which Josh's books have been translated. Okay, this is a big ministry, and Josh is kind of a big deal. But you would never know that this ministry happened and his love for Jesus and to get the message of Jesus into the world by his past. Because what we know is that he was sexually raped by a farmhand for 7 years, starting at the age of 6. 7 years. His father was a drunk, never ever protected him. His mom beat him when he told her, like, hey, the farmhand's doing this. She beat him. That was the response. But for Josh, here's the cool thing. He never let his past destroy his future. And that is my plea for you today. Some of you have had really tough lives thus far. Maybe you had a father like Jacob, unattentive, unloving. Some of you had a father like Josh McDowell did, unattentive, unloving, drunk, drug addict, whatever you fill in those blanks. But when you become a follower of Jesus, like Josh, you don't have to worry about your past anymore. It's gone. Look at what Paul says in 2 Corinthians. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he's a new creation. Old things have passed away. Behold, all things have become new. I want you to know, like, whatever that person said or did to you that hurt you, you can just throw that into your past and say, it's gone. I'm a new creation in Christ. I would say God is heartbroken over the person that hurts you or the people that hurt you. He's heartbroken over your past. But unfortunately, that's just living in a very sin-filled world, a fallen world where people are just mean and not nice, and they have their own stuff in their life that they're dealing with. But the good thing about following Jesus is he can redeem your future, and that's what we need to remember. Here's what we need to know. It's not where you've been that matters as much as where you're going. But here's the problem. We have baggage. We just have baggage. Joseph had baggage because of all the injustices done. Think about how he felt like, my brothers did this, they lied, they kidnapped me, they sold me. Like, there's a lot of baggage for someone like, how could they do that? I mean, I don't know why he didn't just roll up in a ball and just like live in a corner the rest of his life. Like, that's pretty dramatic to have to happen to someone. So he's got that baggage. Think about Joseph's brothers. Imagine the baggage that they had to live with. They lied, they sold their brother, they covered it up to their dad, and then they have baggage for how their dad treated them. Like, so these kids are just filled with baggage. But here's what we need to do with our baggage, and I'm going to play a Skit Guys video. Skit Guys usually have funny videos. They always make us laugh, and every once in a while, they come out with a really serious one, and this is a good one.
You've heard the saying, he's carrying a lot of baggage from his past, or avoid her. Baggage. But think about it. I mean, baggage, we get it from other people, the things that they do to us or say to us. And if we carry those memories around, in essence, we carry baggage. We begin collecting baggage when we're just little kids.
There you are.
Hey.
Hi.
Hey,
Hey, I need to talk to you.
yeah, what?
Well, we were talking about building the tree house.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love tree houses.
Yeah, it's just a thing. See, you can't help us build the tree house.
Why?
Well, you don't really want me to tell you.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, well, we were talking, the gang, we were talking, and, well, you're too fat.
What?
You'll weigh down the tree house.
I'm not fat.
Yes.
No,
Yes.
I'm not. No, Mommy just says I'm big boned.
Dinosaurs are big boned, you're fat.
No. Mommy says I'm chunky.
Peanut butter's chunky, you're fat.
No. Mommy says that I've lost weight.
I think you found it.
No. Mommy says I'm just different.
Your mommy says you're just different?
Yeah, I'm just different.
Go back to where you came from. I gotta go. Bye.
Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That's one of the biggest lies we teach children. Words hurt. They cut deep. And if we carry around the words of other people, essentially what we do is we're collecting baggage. You see, we can't find our self-worth based on what other people think of us. We have to find our self-worth based on Christ and our relationship with Him. But it doesn't seem to be that easy. And as life goes on and we get older, we just tend to collect more baggage. Sometimes we pick up baggage from people who are very close to us, like a best friend.
No, I know, Shelley, I know. It's like we talked for 3 hours and it seemed like 5 minutes. I know. It's like we have this amazing connection, this chemistry. Okay, I'm just gonna say this, Shelley. I've never said this to anyone in a really long time. Shelley, I feel like you're my density. I really, really do. No, you're right. You're my destiny. That's what I meant. You're my destiny, right? I'm just so full. Hey, he's right here. I gotta go. Okay, bye. Hey, buddy, what's up?
Not much. Who are you talking to?
Talking to my mom.
Your mom's your destiny.
Yeah. I mean, she gave birth to me and everything. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Kudos.
Really?
Yeah.
Because it sounds like you said Shelley.
Yeah. That's her name.
I thought your mom's name was Kelly.
That's her middle name.
Your mom's name's Kelly Shelley?
Yeah, and she was picked on a lot when she was a kid, so I just really try to encourage her all the time and tell her that I love her. What's wrong with that?
Okay,
I mean, that's a great thing to do.
Whatever. Did you talk to my Shelley?
Yeah, I did.
And?
She's not going to be your Shelley.
What?
Look, we just started talking and we just kind of hit it off. I mean, it just happened. I mean, we had this great chemistry. It just...
No. You were supposed to call her for me.
I did. I started out doing that. I did. You gotta believe me.
You're supposed to be my best friend.
I am. Don't let a girl come between us, okay? This is not a big...
You did this. Look, man, you know I've liked her since we were in kindergarten, and you were supposed to talk to her for me.
Yes, but I've been your best friend since kindergarten, and we've always said growing up, best friends forever, right?
Yeah, well, you know what? Forever just got a lot shorter.
Don't do this. Don't do this. It's a
You did this.
You're supposed to be my best friend. And our friends. They're just trying to get through life the same way we are. And sometimes they're going to make poor choices, and we can either learn to forgive them or we can pick up more baggage. You know, the truth about baggage is we don't need other people to load it on us. We do a pretty good job of dumping baggage on ourselves when we compare ourselves to others. We think things like, if I could be as popular as they are, if I could be as gifted and talented as they are, but I'm not. I'm a loser. I'm no good. And when we think that, we pick up more baggage. Or we find ourselves thinking, they have it made. And why is life so easy for them and so hard for me? I'm never gonna make it. And when we buy into that lie, more baggage. And sometimes we pick up baggage from people who love us dearly. They just don't realize that their words cut like a knife.
Son,
Hey, Dad.
what happened out there?
The ball slipped. The lights got in my eyes.
The lights got in your eyes.
Yeah.
You know that's what cost us the game, don't you?
Yeah.
The ball slipped. How many times have I gotten up in the morning before 5 a.m. before I go to work on the stuff with you, huh? There were scouts out there. You realize that?
Dad, the ball slipped.
The ball slipped.
It did. I mean, what do you want?
Hey, Coach. Huh? No. Butterfingers, yeah. We're going to work with him. Uh-huh. All right. See you later. Are you crying?
No.
Well, don't. Pull it together. People are watching. I want you to grab your stuff. I'm going to go to the car and I'll meet you there, all right?
Dad.
I'm just disappointed in you, all right? These were our dreams, right? Grab your stuff.
And our parents, they don't mean to hurt us. It's just they've got their own baggage. And when you don't deal with baggage, you pass it on. And for us, we have to learn to find our self-worth only in our relationship with Christ. And if we don't, we pick up more baggage. It gets uncomfortable, tedious, and our natural tendency is to want to dump this baggage onto someone else, but it always backfires.
Hey, can I ask you a question?
What are you doing in my room?
I just need to ask you a question.
What?
Can you give me and my friends a ride to school? It's cold and I don't want to ride my bike. What?
Are you really asking that?
Yeah, I don't think it's a big deal. Just give me a ride and some of my friends to school.
You need to understand something. Just because you and your loser friends are in high school now doesn't mean I'm going to give you a ride, okay? Because look at me. You need to understand that when people look at you, they see a freak, all right? And if they know that I'm related to you, if they know we're brothers, they're going to think I'm a freak too, okay? And I'm not okay with that. So here's the deal. I don't care how you get there. I don't care if you have to walk or crawl or whatever, but I'm not going to be a chauffeur for you and your loser friends, okay?
It's not my fault that Dad left. Why do you keep taking out on me?
Whatever.
No, you know I'm right.
Okay. I'm sorry.
You're not sorry. You're only sorry that I'm calling you out. I'll just ride my bike.
I said I was sorry.
I'll ride my bike.
Come on. And in the process of trying to dump our baggage on someone else, inevitably what happens is we pick up more baggage. And then there's that one. My sin. My secret sin. It's cool. I mean, I've got it under control. Who am I kidding? Most of the time it has control of me. And this is the way I live. And yet, I hear the words of Christ who says, I've come that you may have life and may have it abundantly. I don't know about you, but this doesn't really feel like abundant life to me. I can't walk straight. I can barely keep my balance. And then I remember his words. Because Christ also said, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. That's what I want. That's what I want. So I go to God. God, please, if you're willing, would you take this baggage from me? Because God, I'm miserable and I can't live this way anymore. Please take it. And you know what? He takes it.
Ooh, amen to that. But my point to showing you that is that Joseph had a lot of baggage, and he could have just been mad at God the rest of his life, but he didn't do that. He did what he was supposed to do. He just moved on in his life, and he just had to believe that God had something more for him. And he's going to start learning this as we're picking up our story here. Genesis 43, verse 1. Now the famine was still severe in the land. Remember, it's severe in Egypt and Israel. So when this is Joseph's, the brothers, the 10 brothers, and the dad. So when they had eaten all the grain they had brought from Egypt, their father said to them, go back and buy us a little more food. Now, go back and buy us food. Have you forgotten your son is in jail? Like, why is that not a big deal? Like, they've just lollygagged, they've eaten up all the food. We're talking months and months before they even go back to even get Simeon out of jail. But they had the ability to go and get food. This made me laugh. There was a man by the name of Bill. He was he was one of these guys that believed adamantly in living by faith. It's like, if I pray and I believe and then God's going to always just give me what I pray for. So he decided one day he was going to quit his job. He got up in front of his church and said, from this day forward, I'm literally going to just trust God for everything. And he quit, and he bought a little house on a rougher side of town. And so the first night, he just prayed, God, I'm praying for food. Would you please bring me food? God, I really am getting hungry. So the next day, he goes out onto his porch. There's no food. He's like, well, what the heck? I just prayed, I believed, I did all of those things. And so he spent all day the next day praying that God would provide him food. And so this happened for 4 days. No food. No food showed up on his doorstep. And so by the 5th day, he was frustrated and mad at God. He fell back on his bed and he stared at the wall. But in silence, he heard God speak. Bill. And Bill goes, Lord, are you finally answering my prayer? And God says, well, I have been answering your prayer. You've just been looking in the wrong direction. And Bill says, well, what do you mean, Lord? I don't understand. And God said, well, walk outside. He walked outside. Of course, there's no food anywhere. And he goes, but Lord, there's nothing here. I don't see any food. And he said, well, you're looking at the wrong direction. And he looked up to this. Day laborers wanted, lunch will be provided. In other words, you got to go do something, okay? You can't just sit back and trust God for things that you can actually participate in. So for Jacob, he could have just been like, oh, dear God, please provide us food. And God's like, I don't know, send your boys to Egypt. That's where the food is. So that's what was going to happen. But Judah says this to Jacob. He said, the man warned us solemnly, you will not see my face again unless your brother was with you. Baby Benjamin, okay? Although he's not really a baby anymore. If you will send our brother along with us, we will go down and buy food for you. But if you will not send him, we will not go down, because the man said to us, you will not see my face again unless your brother is with you. Then, of course, Jacob, his name is Israel also, has to blame Judah, because, of course, Jacob blames everyone but himself. Israel said, why did you bring this trouble on me by telling the man you had another brother? It's like now it's his fault. And they replied, Dad, serious. The man questioned us closely about ourselves and our family. Is your father still living? He asked. Do you have another brother? We simply answered the questions. How were we to know? He would say, bring your brother down here. Okay. Then Judah said to Israel, his father, send the boy along with me, and we will go at once, so that we and you and our children may live and not die. I myself will guarantee his safety. Now, this is the second son that's like, look, take whatever. He says, I will guarantee his safety. You can hold me personally responsible for him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him here before you, I will bear the blame before you all my life. As it is, if we had not delayed, we could have gone and returned twice. Here's what we need to learn. Sometimes desperate situations force our hand. It's kind of like one too many blackouts after a night of drinking might mean, I don't know, you might want to join AA, okay? A pain that won't go away, you're just like, no, it's fine, but now you can't walk, might mean you need to go to the doctor, even though you're terrified of doctors. Like sometimes when the situation gets so desperate, that's what forces our hand. And what we learn is that many times God will make sure we're at the end of our rope before he steps in and moves us to the place he needs us to be. Now, for Jacob, the end of the rope would be his entire family, his children, grandchildren. They're about ready to die of starvation. And at some point, enough has to be enough. So Jacob makes the decision to allow his precious Benjamin to go with his brothers to get more grain. Verse 11. Then their father Israel said to them, if it must be, then do this. Put some of the best products of the land in your bags and take them down to the man as a gift. A little balm, a little honey, some spices and myrrh, some pistachio nuts and almonds. Take double the amount of silver with you, for you must return the silver that was put back into the mouths of your sacks. Perhaps it was a mistake. Take your brother also and go back to the man at once. And may God, finally he brings God into the whole picture, and may God Almighty grant you mercy before the man, so that he will let your other brother and Benjamin come back with you. As for me, if I am bereaved, I am bereaved. Now, here are a couple things that I want to talk about that. The first is this. There comes a point in our life when we become a follower of Jesus that it means surrender. We're not being taught that a lot, but that's actually what it means. God, my life is yours. We have to surrender our plan for our life to God's plan for our life. And that's hard. But sometimes, that's what God is calling us to do. For so many people like Jacob, he's like, he had to surrender. Like his plan was to keep Benjamin safe and protected. God's plan was to get Benjamin to Egypt. What we learn is Proverbs 21:31. This is kind of a cool verse. The horse is prepared for the day of battle, but victory belongs to the Lord. Which means there are things in your life and my life that we actually have to do. Like you got to go to your job and work hard. You have to go to school, study, work with integrity, put out applications if we need a job, start exercising if we need to lose weight. Ugh, I don't like that. Cindy sent this to me. It made me laugh. This is me checking if that salad I ate last week has worked its magic yet. Good one, Cindy. Okay, and then this is how I'm going to exercise right here. That would be me, okay? But for Jacob, his job would be to release his son, like his precious son, and allow him to go to Egypt, regardless of the outcome. And that is what surrender means. It means, God, whatever you do, I'm going to trust you, regardless if it turns out the way I want it to or not. Because many times, what we have to do is we have to let go first. That's what God asks us. Let go of it. We have to say, everything is yours, God. And we tend to think that, our spouse, our kids, our job, it's all mine. But it actually isn't. But when we think it's ours, we get anxiety because we have to control everything now. We have to control the kids, we have to control the spouse, and we have to control my job. Everything is controlled, and then we get anxious. But here's what I've come to realize. The way to live a peaceful life, free of fear and anxiety, is to surrender everything. It just is. It's like, God, it's your deal. God, every piece of my puzzle that I'm going to be dealing with in my life, I'm entrusting this to you. And it may turn out good, it may turn out bad, I don't know, but this is yours. And there's something about when you do that, you're just like, well, I can't pay this bill. God, I'm praying that you make sure that I get money. My kid's a disaster. God, I'm praying that you'll take care of my kid. Do you see what I'm saying? It takes it off of us and it's like baggage. We release it and it goes on to him and he takes care of it. That's how you get rid of anxiety. Everything goes upward. I'm going to tell you a story about surrender and perseverance. And I'm hoping that will encourage you when you hear this. Rob and I have been reading these books, Daring Dependence and Daring Devotion. M.R. Conrad wrote it. I have a couple of them over there. I will suggest that every person in this room gets it and reads it. It's like a 31-day devotional thing, but it's stories about missionaries from the 1400s to the 1900s and how they literally surrendered their lives to Jesus and served God under the most unbelievable circumstances. But like Rob was saying this morning, this book has changed my life because it does. It gives you a whole different perspective on following Jesus. But anyway, I want to tell you one of the stories that's in the book because this is this whole idea of surrender. There's a story about a man by the name of Adoniram Judson. Those of you that know missionaries will know that name. He was a missionary to Burma in the 1800s. He and his wife Nancy had been there for 10 years. They're just telling people about Jesus. He's translating the Bible into the Burmese language. And that's what's his whole goal in life. He wants to share Jesus with people who'd never heard of him before. But 10 years into this, there was a war that began between Burma and Britain. And they captured Adoniram. He was hauled away to a death prison, which horrible, horrible conditions. And in the midst of this, his wife Nancy's pregnant. Okay? Now, foreign country, wife pregnant, I'm in a horrible prison. What do you do? But for him, he knew God called him there. So he's like, here you go. I'm surrendering everything. God, my wife is yours. You're going to have to protect her. I'm in prison. I can't. God, my baby is yours. If you want this child to be born, you're going to have to protect the child. I don't know. But here's how he ends. Our lives are about serving you. So whatever you decide to do in my life, I'm on board with because I trust you with everything. I not only trust you, I believe that you're going to take my puzzle piece and whether it's good or bad, I'm still going to follow you. And that's what Jacob should have done. Instead of whining, we always hear him whining. Instead of whining, he should have been like, God, I trust you with Benjamin. God, I pray you'll keep Simeon safe. Everything go upward. He doesn't do that. He makes it all about him. Now, along with Adoniram being there, he was translating the Bible into the Burmese language. And he spent years and years and years doing this. So he had the manuscript. Well, now he's in prison. And this is a corrupt government. And so he has no control over the years and years he spent translating this Bible into Burmese. And all he could do as he's sitting in a prison cell is say, God, I trust you with this. If someone finds it and they destroy it, then my work is, there's nothing I can do. But God, I'm entrusting it to you. So, because his wife knew that the government could show up at their house and that they would literally destroy it, she had this idea. So she takes this filthy old pillow and she sewed the manuscript inside. And she took it to the prison. And she gave it to the guards. It was this filthy looking pillow. And she takes it to the guards. And she says, could you give this to my husband? Well, because it wasn't nice, like who wants a filthy, dirty pillow, they actually gave it to him. So for the time being, in prison, his manuscript was protected, even though like no one even knew that. But 11 months into his prison sentence, he was suddenly moved. They didn't even have time to go get their stuff. He's moved to a prison like farther away, and that prison was abandoned. And now he didn't even have time to go get his pillow/Bible. So a Christian man, his name was Meng Ing, he just assumed that Adoniram was probably dead at this point. So he goes to the abandoned prison, and because he wants to find anything he can of Adoniram's, and he found the pillow and the Bible with it stuffed inside. But the cool thing is that Adoniram really actually wasn't dead. For over a year, he still was in prison, forced deprivation, torture, everything that you can imagine. But the war ended in 1825. And when it did, Meng Ing found Adoniram and handed him his Burmese translation. And the cool thing is that God had preserved both the translator and the translation through the war. Because God is that big. And that's what we need to remember. Sometimes we get this, God, He can do anything. And he wanted Adoniram to make sure that was taken care of and protected, and he did. But it all began with Adoniram going, God, I'm surrendering. I'm surrendering the translation, my wife, my child, everything is yours. I'm going to trust you. And I think when you and I can get to that point in our life, it changes everything. It just actually does. Now, Adoniram continued working on the Bible, completing it in 1834. His wife had a little baby girl, okay, for those of you that want to know that. But here's what the best part of the story is that he never walked away from his faith. It was tough. And because he never walked away from his faith, when life got tough, he literally saw 100 people get saved in this area because of the Bible that he translated. When he died, there were 63 churches and 7,000 people that gave their life to Christ, all because he surrendered his life to Jesus and then he persevered until the end, even in the bad times. He also worked with a whole other group of people, and when at the time of his death, 800 churches and 150,000 people were believers. And this is under the worst situations. He entrusted his life to Jesus regardless of what would happen. And so you and I, we cannot imagine that kind of Christianity here in America. But I would say, what if America changed one day? What if we woke up in the morning and a foreign country came in, invaded us, went through our homes, took our Bibles away, said you can't worship anymore, all of those things. Do we know the Bible well enough to be imprisoned and still stand strong for our faith? Do we know Jesus enough that we would just trust him and be like, you know what, I'm all in regardless. So I'm in prison, let's tell people about Jesus. Because that's what following Jesus is about. It's about persevering. It's about trusting him when we cannot see the whole puzzle picture. Trusting him in times that make absolute no sense. And that's why those books are so incredibly important for you to get. Because we make life so much about me, okay, us. Jacob made life all about him. We live in America where it's all about our feelings. I need to be validated. That person hurt me. I stubbed my toe. The pastor had an affair and blew up my faith. That Christian was mean to me, so I'm never going back to church. It's all about, we have literally made following Jesus about me. And because of that thought process is morphing into God, our relationship with him. And now it's, God, how could you let me get cancer? How could you let my husband leave me? How could you let my child go to prison? How could you let me? It's all about me. And when you read these books, you're finding, wait a minute, I think they got it right. It's not about me any longer. It's about Jesus. And I'm not minimizing, there's tough things in life, but what if we could trust that God had a plan regardless of how painful it was? Because the people in these books, these missionaries, they kept their faith going in Jesus. Here you go, even though they had every legitimate reason to fall apart. They did. Adoniram, the two previous wives that he had, both died. He lost 3 children. He spent dark times of despair, prison, torture, and he never, ever gave up his faith. Imagine if every Christian in the United States could live with that kind of resolve. I hear about this faith deconstruction that's going on, and I'm like, what is wrong with you people? Okay, I kind of just like, I want to shake them. Because you go, well, why are you walking away from Jesus? Well, someone in my church hurt me. Get over it. That's my theory. They taught me things that just, that don't make sense to me, and it bothered me when they said that. Okay, study the Bible for yourself. That would be a novel idea. Or how's this? I just want to live a lifestyle that the Bible doesn't condone, and so I'm leaving my faith. Well, then you never understood what it meant to follow Jesus in the first place. Okay, so there's this whole weird, it's all about me and my feelings, which is why we need to understand what these missionaries and Peter and Paul and John and all the disciples, here's what they're trying to teach us. My life is given to Jesus, hands down. To live is Christ, to die is gain. End of story. And that is the message we need to get into our churches, because that's the truth of what it means to follow Jesus. And we don't get it now, but someday we may have to. Someday, America might be in a position where that we better know that well enough to stand on it. And I always say that these missionaries and all of the apostles, they lived through hunger, torture, unimaginable loss and sickness, and yet they ended their life saying this, yay! I followed Jesus through it all because he gave me the strength. And we can too. I totally believe that. Now, back to Jacob. Jacob finally surrendered, there you go, his precious Benjamin to the care of his brothers. Reluctantly, I might add. Off the boys went with the money. They found their bags that the money that they'd found in their bags, they needed to return that. And then they were bringing some gifts. So let's pick it up in verse 15. So the men took the gifts and doubled the amount of silver, and Benjamin also. They hurried down to Egypt and presented themselves to Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of his house, "Take these men to my house, slaughter an animal, and prepare dinner there to eat with me at noon." The man did as Joseph told him and took the men to Joseph's house. Now, the men were frightened. They were taken to his house. Now, I laugh at this because this is, I think I told you of all my kids. Like if they have a little bump, they're just like, I have cancer. No, you have a little bump, okay? They go from 0 to 100 in 5 seconds. Like they take something little and suddenly it goes worst case scenario, okay? And that's what the boys do here. So apparently all children do that. Verse 18. He said, now the men were frightened that they were taken to his house, and this is what they thought. They created all these monsters. We were brought here because of the silver that was put back into our sacks the first time. He wants to attack us and overpower us and seize us as slaves and take our donkeys. It's like, serious? Could you go from 0 to 100 any faster than that? All right. So they went to Joseph's steward and spoke to him at the entrance of the house. "Please, sir," they said, "we came down here the first time to buy food, but at the place where we stopped for the night, we opened our sacks and each of us found his silver, the exact weight in the mouth of his sack. So we have brought it back with us. We have also brought additional silver with us to buy food. We don't know who put silver in our sack." Now, Joseph needed to know that. He needed to know that the brothers have changed. And by putting money in their sack and them coming clean with the truth, it was one test that they actually passed. Verse 23. "It's all right," he said. "Don't be afraid. Your God, the God of your father, has given you treasure in your sacks. I received your silver." Then he brought Simeon out to them. So now Simeon, who's been in jail, has now joined the brothers. The steward took the men into the house, gave them water to wash their feet, and provided fodder for their donkeys. They prepared their gifts for Joseph's arrival at noon because they had heard that they were to eat with him. When Joseph came home, they presented to him the gifts that they had brought into the house, and they bowed down before him. Now, once again, remember the dream that he had when he was younger, like, I'm dreaming that all you guys would bow down to me. That's what got him in trouble, and that's why they were jealous of him, and all of it's coming to fruition. Suddenly, the puzzle pieces are starting to fit together. And Joseph's like, oh my gosh, I get it. I'm beginning to get it. So, verse 27. Joseph says, he asked them how they were, and then he said, "How is your aged father you told me about? Is he still living?" And they replied, "Your servant's father is still alive and well." They bowed low to pay him honor. As he looked about and saw his brother Benjamin, his own mother's son, he asked, "Is this your youngest brother, the one you told me about?" And he said, "God be with you, be gracious to you, my son." Deeply moved at the sight of his brother, Joseph hurried out and looked for a place to weep. He went into his private room and wept there. I mean, think about it. Joseph is so overwhelmed at this point. He tested his brothers, they came through. He wanted to see Benjamin, he's right in front of him. These men were just not the same men that they were 20 years before. The hatred was gone, the selfishness was gone. They finally grew up, they'd acknowledged their sin, they were humble, and because of this, Joseph is inundated with emotion, and he walks out and bursts into tears. Verse 31, after he had washed his face, he came out, controlling himself, and said, serve the food. They served him by himself, the brothers by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because Egyptians could not eat with Hebrews, for that is detestable to Egyptians. The men had been seated before him in the order of their ages, from the firstborn to the youngest, and they looked at each other in astonishment. Like Joseph had them all set up, oldest to youngest, and they're looking around like, how do they know this? Like they still have no idea who Joseph is. But then Joseph decides to test his brothers one last time before he reveals who he is. And because here's the deal. He knows his 10 brothers came back, or 9 brothers came back for Simeon. Because Simeon, remember, was part of the 10 to the left up there with, it wasn't Benjamin and Joseph. The 10 were like, he was part of that 10. So they came back for him. But would they take care of Benjamin, daddy's favorite? Like, what would they do? Would they come around him and protect him, or would they just leave him like they did Joseph? So Joseph gives them one last test. Now Joseph gave these instructions to the steward at his house. Fill the men's sacks with as much food as they can carry, and put each man's silver in the mouth of his sack. Then put my cup, the silver one, in the mouth of the youngest one's sack. So he's saying, then take this silver cup and put it in Benjamin's sack, okay, along with the silver for his grain, and he did as Joseph said. As morning dawned, the men were sent on their way with their donkeys. They had not gone far from the city when Joseph said to his steward, go after those men at once, and when you catch up with them, say to them, why have you repaid good for evil? The steward's like, what? Like he said, go and get those boys and say these things to him. Say this, isn't this the cup? Oh, should I change this? I don't know where I'm at. Isn't this the cup my master drinks from and also uses for divination? Yeah, there we go. This is a wicked thing you've done. When he caught up with them, he repeated these words to them. But they said to him, why does my Lord say such things? Far be it from your servants to do anything like that. They're like, we would never do that. Why would you say that to us? He said, we brought back to you from the land of Canaan the silver we found in the mouths of our sacks. Why would we steal silver or gold from your master's house? If any, I don't know where we're at here. If any of your servants is found to have it, he will die, and the rest of us will become my Lord's slave. In other words, check all of our bags. Whoever has the silver, he's going to die. And then we, the rest of us here, will just become your slaves. Very well, he said, let it be as you say. Whoever is found to have it will be my slave. The rest of you will be free from blame. In other words, never mind. You guys can all go home. If someone has it, I'm keeping whoever. He knew it was Benjamin. Each of them quickly lowered his sack to the ground. Then the steward proceeded a search, beginning with the oldest and ending with the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. At this, they tore their clothes. They all loaded their donkeys and returned to the city. Just when the brothers think all is well, okay, they're overtaken. Benjamin is accused of stealing Joseph's silver cup, which of course he did not do, but Joseph set it all up because he wants to know if those other brothers, those 10, would stand up for Benjamin and take care of him, unlike what they did not do with him. Genesis 44:14. Joseph was still in the house when Judah, remember Judah was one of the brothers, and his brothers came in and they threw themselves to the ground before him. Joseph said to them, what is this you've done? Don't you know that a man like me can find things out by divination? What can we say to my Lord? Judah replied. What can we say? How can we prove our innocence? God has uncovered your servant's guilt. We are now my Lord's slaves, we ourselves and the one who was found to have the cup. But Joseph said, far be it from me to do such a thing. Only the man who was found to have the cup will be my slave. The rest of you go to your father in peace. It's this moment that the integrity of his brothers is on the line, and this is what Joseph was waiting for. Would they leave Benjamin alone in a foreign country, just like they did to him 20 years ago? Would they take the grain and go home to their dad and be like, oh, I'm so sorry, Benjamin got eaten by another animal? Like, are they going to do the same thing? Like, he has no idea. And then Judah speaks, one of the brothers. Judah says this, Then Judah went up to him and said, please, my lord. He doesn't know it's Joseph, but we'll just say Joseph. Please, Joseph, whatever. Let your servant, me, speak to my lord. Do not be angry with your servant, though you're equal to Pharaoh himself. My lord asked his servants. Okay, so now he's saying, he's putting it on Joseph. Joseph, he doesn't know it's Joseph. You asked us, do you have a father or a brother? And we answered, we have an aged father, and there's a young son born to him in his old age. His brother is dead, and he's the only one of his mother's sons left, and his father loves him. Okay? Then you said, he's saying, now look at Joseph, but you said this, bring him down to me so I can see him for myself. And we said, the boy cannot leave his father. If he leaves him, his father will die. But you told your servants, unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you will not see my face again. When we went back to your servant, my father, we told him what you said. And then our father said, go back and buy a little more food. But we said, can't do that. We cannot do that. If our youngest brother is not with us, we can't see the man, or you, Joseph, which they didn't know, won't be able to see us. Verse 27, your servant, my father, said to us, you know that my wife bore me 2 sons. One of them went away from me, or that's standing in front of them right now, and he has surely been torn to pieces, because that's what Jacob was told, and I have not seen him since. If you take this one from me too, and harm comes to him, you will bring my gray head down to the grave in misery. So he says this to Joseph. He says, if the boy is not with us when I go back to your servant, my father, and if my father, whose life is closely bound up with the boy's life, sees that the boy isn't there, he will die. Your servants will bring the gray head of our father down to the grave in sorrow. So he said, your servant, he's saying that about himself now, I, Judah, he said, I guaranteed basically Benjamin's safety to my dad. If I do not bring him back to you, I will bear the blame before you, my father, all my life. That's what I told him. Now then, please, and here's the moment that Joseph's been waiting for, let your servant remain here. Let me remain, Judah, saying, I will stay here as my Lord's slave in place of the boy, in place of Benjamin, and let Benjamin return with his brothers. How can I go back to my father if Benjamin is not with me? Do not let the misery that would come upon my father. And finally, the truth came out for Joseph. Judah was willing to give up his life for Benjamin to save him. And that was the moment Joseph was waiting for. So, all of that will end here. I want to just end asking this. Because everyone has to come to a point in their life, like Joseph's going to have to right now, does Joseph really believe God is in it? The question is our faith real? Do we really believe what the Bible says when things go south in our life? Do we really honestly believe it? Kyle Eidelman told a story of when he was called to the hospital one night. There was a young girl, she was going into labor. It was their first little baby, and she was actually born stillborn. And Kyle sat with the father who was grieving, and the father looked at Kyle and he said this. He said, I guess this is when I find out if I really believe what I say I believe. Because there are moments in your life and my life when we are going to be tested to really find out, do I really believe that God is in control? Do I really believe that all of these puzzle pieces are fitting together for some reason? Do I believe that or not? And sometimes it takes hardship to figure that out. When my cousin passed away, died in that car accident, her husband said, I'm going to really miss Rhonda. It's going to be very difficult living without her. But his next words were, but God is good. And he meant every word of it. Because he spent his life surrendered to Jesus for whatever he wanted to happen. So here's where I want to go. I'll just go all the way to the end here. Joseph couldn't see the big picture as it was happening. And it didn't make any sense to him at the time. But he finally now is putting the pieces together. And so that's where we're going to end. And I want to... I had so much more to say, but it's 10, so we have to go. But here's the deal. I just want you to remember this story when life takes a turn. To realize that, you know what? Every puzzle piece of Joseph, from the moment his brothers sold him to traders to the moment that he met back up with his brothers, they're all part of a piece of a puzzle. I want you to say, whatever you're going through, I want you to go, you know what? It's just a puzzle piece. And God is going to put it together with something else to build out the entire puzzle of my life. Father, thank you for Joseph and the words that you've given us today. God, thank you that he persevered. Thank you for the missionaries that persevered, the apostles, the followers of you that have just persevered to the end. God, I pray that we'll walk out of here saying, you know what? I need to surrender my life to Jesus. In reality, like I really do. And I pray that happens today. For those that are going through really difficult times, I pray that they will be encouraged, knowing, you know what? Whatever I'm going through is just a puzzle piece, and God's got this, and he's right in the middle of it. I pray that you would help us to do that as we walk out of here in Jesus' precious name. Amen.